I'm going live.
Okay.
I'll say hello and then we'll get going. Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Good morning. Yeah, good morning. So, good morning. Hi, everyone. My name is Eme Basi from the Yellow Pepper Club. And today we have a special guest, Funlayo Ogunyoye, who is going to be having a conversation with us about making the transition from being 9 to 5 to being self-employed. And we're just going to have a conversation. Her journey is an interesting one, and hopefully, you'll get something out of this conversation. So, welcome, Fulayo.
Good morning.
Hi. We were just having a chat just now, and I was like, "No, stop. Let's go live so that you can continue telling me the story while we are live." But we were just talking about your journey. How you started, and and how how you started. In the world of work. So, can you just tell us about where you started, from when you finished university, what did you study, and all that?
Okay, thank you so much, Emma. I will take you on my journey, and please feel free to stop me if I'm going off on a tangent in the wrong direction, because you know what I'm like. So 1990 was when I started my first degree, and it was a podiatry degree. So I did that from 1990 to 93. And when I started with the podiatry, it was really interesting because we studied so many wonderful things. With podiatry, there are so many aspects to it. So it's not just cutting toenails. You could do surgery, you could do older people, you could do sports, you could do, rheumatoid people, you can specialize in diabetes. There's just so much. And you can do routine, which is what I'm doing now. So it's almost like having a GP where the GP sees everything and then you can refer people on if, because your GP is not going to be a specialist in everything.
Mm, mm.
So I did this, finished in 93. I was really excited. And then went into the real world, and got into the real world and worked. And I was thinking, oh, is this it? This is, I lost that spark of excitement, that I was expecting to see, especially when I was comparing myself to my colleagues that were working like in the city in other jobs, doing other things.
Yeah, when they all get all dressed up in their
Yes, all dressed and glammed up. And with my kind of work, because one of the things I elected to do when I started working was I told the employers I liked doing home visits. And they were very shocked because most people didn't like doing them. They hated doing home visits. It meant working in the community. If you
mm,
worked in the clinic and in the hospitals, everything was nice, clean, pristine. Secretary will bring you a nice drink, and you're in a nice environment to sit in. Obviously, doing home visits, you never know what you will see. You go
mm,
to see people in their homes. But the reason why I liked the home visits was it gave me a lot of flexibility, which is one
mm.
thing I always knew I liked. So I guess in a way, in my head, that was really telling me something that I listened to maybe 30 years later properly, because
Yeah.
I didn't want to be stuck in the environment of, you go into this building and basically you work for 40 years sitting in a building.
Mm,
So I
mm.
loved
So
going out. I loved the fresh air.
that flexibility of, okay, almost like you're already beginning to be in charge of your own time, and yeah, that.
Absolutely. That was it. And when you did home visits, they gave you that flexibility. You didn't have to be in at 9 on the dot, because
Mm,
you had this latitude of 2 hours, for whenever you had to see people. So long and short of it, anyhow, was, I started doing this work because I worked in the NHS for about 15 years when I qualified, and some of it was part time. So yes, I got in, started. I used to dress really nicely to work, and every time I got into the office, people would ask me, "Oh, where am I going?" I said, "Well, I came to work." They say, "Why are you dressed nicely? Why are you putting on your jewelry? That this jewelry is like, isn't it for special occasions?" And you
oh,
know how we Africans are. We like to dress up.
yes, we do. We
So
do.
this was me. I was thinking, what's wrong with these people? Anyway, I'll see them. They wear their trainers, they wear their jeans, whatever, and just come in and a jumper. So every time I come in, they'll be like, "Oh, for me, oh, you look nice." I was always, some talking by, the receptionist or whatever that will, make nice comments. Anyway, long and short of it, eventually I too started dumbing down with my dressing. Before I knew it, I too was coming in jeans, jumper, and all that business. But talking about all this, I have to say the journey of working full time, because then I was working full time. I had no children at that time. And it was good in a way that I had that structure at the beginning, because
Mm,
that structure actually helped with later on.
really?
So yes, it did
Mm,
help. Because I used to sit with this, receptionists. They used to show me how they organize the day, the diary, and all that. Although they did the work for us, they'll get the files out and everything. I used to, I got on well with them. So basically, I could kind of see outside what was happening. If you're a person that wanted to get involved,
picture. Mm.
you could see what they did. But if you are just a clinician that you are not interested, they'll give you your files, off
And
you go, and that's it. You give them the files back and they'll deal with it. So long and short of it anyway, I got bored eventually. And about 6 years into qualifying, around this is 1999, I I felt sorry, 1996, sorry, about three years after I'd finished, I felt really bored, and I thought, you know what, I need to do something. So this is at the point where I then thought, let me go and study another course. So while I was working full time, I then went and studied a law degree, because I always had an interest in law and all that anyway. And I thought, you know what,
mm,
let me see if this is something I can do, because I wasn't so confident that it was something I could do. But when I went to Birkbeck and I studied part time, which is what anyone listening, Birkbeck is a online. I think they have online courses, but also they're in London and they are more for adults.
yes, adults,
Uh-huh,
parents, people
exactly,
who are working or you want to study part time.
exactly, and they're really good. They have a good reputation. They're part of University of London. So I basically went there to do the law course in the evenings over 4 years. Then at that time, lots of things were happening in my life. I got married, and then I also, became pregnant with the first child. So when I was doing this course that was meant to be 4 years, I spoke to my tutor and I was like, you know what, I don't think I can cope because I work full time, then,
You're expecting.
the expecting. And then I was thinking, once this child comes, I don't know how I can do this. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Luckily, I had a really good tutor and he encouraged me, said, look, for me, if you go and come back in a year, he said, a lot of people do this. They said they'll come back and you won't come back. Just study really hard. This was a 4-year course. I did it in 3 years because he said to me, if you study really hard and work well, you can do this. So basically, I did it in 3 years and I got a 2-1, which I was really proud of,
oh,
you
wow.
know, because it was a lot of hard work, believe me, sleeping at 3 a.m., then going to work in the morning.
Mm,
So basically, these are things you just had to do. And part of this journey, I would say, is you have to be disciplined and you shouldn't be afraid of hard work. Anyone that's doesn't want to put the energy into it, you find it's going to be a difficult process. You just have to strive through.
it's one thing to say, oh, this is what I want, but are you ready to work for it?
You need to put the sweat into it. You
Mm,
need to put the determination into it. And you have to have the picture in your mind is the most important thing. Because there are going to be so many obstacles. Lots of obstacles came my way, believe me. Because it's almost as though each time I got to a milestone, I was having another child. So
mm,
I I had my first one. And then that's when I also finished my law degree in 1999. And then at that time, I was also working part-time for the NHS because the NHS had lots of benefits. They gave me a car, you have a pension, good wages. So I started working part-time while I was doing the law. Then when I finished the law, because I wanted to work in the law field, I went to do law school, which
mm.
meant I could either do that 2 years part-time or 1 year full-time. Um, and because at that point in time, in my head, I was so convinced that I was going to make the transition from podiatrist to lawyer because I wanted to be wearing these flashy suits. When you hear lawyer on the television, not that I don't believe in equality. Believe me, I definitely believed in equality and righting wrongs. But I had this image of what the lawyer's work involved.
Mm,
So I did. My husband wasn't too happy because I was doing pretty well in the NHS, earning a pretty good wage with the car and all that. And I had to give that up when I went to now do 2 days a week. I was working 2 days a week with the NHS, so they didn't give me the car. They had to take the car back, and the wages went down. So now I was now doing like clerking work to get into the law thing because
mm,
law school costs. I think it was about 9 or 10,000 pounds then. This is in 1999, 2000. That's a lot of money then.
Wow.
So luckily for me, I applied for a scholarship, which was very competitive, and I got. I think they paid 75% of my law school fees,
Hmm.
and they gave me a bit of money just to help me with the
Hmm.
books and all that.
Hmm.
So even I didn't even think I'll get that, because some of the other people I know that went into it were speaking English so well, they were so convinced they will get it. Even another one of my English friends that went for the same, scholarship as me, she didn't get it, and she was so,
Oh.
upset. But anyway, I thank God, because it really made a difference in the journey. So I did law school for 1 year. When I now finished law school, I studied the bar, and while I was being called, that's when I had my second child. And I was now, at that time, I was working 1 day a week for the NHS. So I wanted to still keep my foot in the NHS while I was doing some odd jobs with the law.
Mm.
And the law work wasn't paid, because when I did clerking, basically you pick up a file for a company, like a firm of solicitors, take it to the court, you write their notes for them, etc., etc. They pay you £25, which was ridiculous, because my husband was look at you're earning good money, blah blah blah, and then you're doing this now. But for me, it was something I really wanted to do. So anyhow, I then, I have to say, I don't know if all people listen to this believe in prayer, but I did pray as well. And while I was doing some of my podiatry work, because you have to juggle a lot, believe me, I was
Mm.
working 1 day a week in the NHS, working as a locum, doing the podiatry because I had to earn extra money, and also doing the law whenever the work came in, because the work was,
Mm.
here and there. You just
Yeah.
had to hustle for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I
So,
know I would come see you and you'd be in different offices or you'd be in a different, today I'm working with the police. This
exactly. I'll just come into the police now. So basically, in 19, no, not 92, I think 2003 or so, because I remember, I think that's when I had my first one, 2002, 3. The Labour government were having a new policy about helping with criminal justice and drug users that are prolific offenders. So they had this new thing they started. And when I was working in the podiatry place in one of the NHS clinics, I just saw something on the table. So what I'm trying to explain to people is, don't be afraid to question people and to probe things. I saw this magazine, and when I read this magazine, they were talking about this criminal justice project, and I thought, this looks interesting, but look at me, I don't know anyone in this field. How will I get into this? So I read the article, and they talked about somewhere in Haringey where they were doing some work. So I just phoned up the place in Haringey. Someone picked up the phone. I said, oh, I read this article. Can I speak to someone there? Maybe I can do some work experience. Long and short of it anyway, that was how I got my foot into the door. Because the person I spoke to seemed interesting. She said, okay, come and do some work experience. I did it for like 3 weeks. And after that, I said to them, you know what? Don't you have any work? And then I was really keen. Then
Mm.
I learned so much about that scheme. So by the time I learned so much about the scheme, a lot of them, they didn't even know what it was about. So I was almost like their expert. So that was how I started working there now.
So you
Now, while
did
I was
your
working
homework.
there, sorry?
I said, so you did your homework.
Exactly. You have to really research and be interested. So while I was working there, another friend now told me that, oh, for me, there's actually another place they're looking for people and they're paying really well. So now I went for an interview in that other place. This, bearing in mind, I was working the NHS 1 day a week, working in this place 4 days a week. So I went for this interview, and like I said, because this was a new scheme, people didn't know what they were doing. And I'm not lying to you guys. By the time I sat down there to do my interview, the first thing the woman said, "You got the job." Ah, I said, "What do you mean?" Like, you said you got the job. When can you start? I said, "Oh, I can start, but I can only do 4 days a week because I do something else 1 day a week." I didn't tell them what it is. So now the woman said to me, "No, sorry, you can't mess about. If you want to work here, you have to work here full time." So anyway, long and short of it, that's
Mm.
how I ended my NHS work. It was, I think, in 2004, something like that, or 5. So I finished the NHS and then I started working full time in the police thing. And that's when you were talking about the police something.
Mm.
So I
Mm.
got into criminal justice. Now, bearing in mind, like I said to you, my plan was to be a practicing barrister. In 2002 was when I was called. Let me see, 2002. Yeah, because that's when I was pregnant with my son. 02. 03, sorry, 02. I think either 2 or 02 or 03, something like that. So
That,
now when you
that's
do the
called
law,
the bar.
yeah, when you do the bar exams and you're called, you have 5 years from when you're called to practice, or
Really?
you have to start all over again. It lapses.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that was the old rules. I think the rules have changed now,
Okay.
but then you had 5 years.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then it is also very competitive. So bearing in mind then, I was older, over 30, black, female, with children. Yeah. So basically, things were stacked really well against me. You know what I mean? So when you're competing with people that have gone to private school, these little kids coming out of uni, with
Yeah,
connections. Uh-huh.
out of university, you
Exactly.
know.
A lot of them with connections. I had no connections in law. So anyway, I just prayed and prayed and prayed, but I was working in that field. And long and short of it, what happened eventually was I managed to convert from the bar to being a solicitor because of all the work our experience had been doing. And that's why I'm saying to people, you must be interested in whatever you're doing. Because until I got the job in the criminal justice, I was doing lots of other things. I was
Mm.
doing also voluntary work with something called the Free Representation Unit, which meant a lot of this was taken into consideration. So they said, you know what, you've basically been doing the necessary work. So I had the ability to convert into a solicitor because they take into account all that work. And then I had to do some work in a firm. So while I was working in the criminal justice, I was also working with a firm where my two kids were young. So when I finish at work, I'll quickly run there, do what I need to do. This happened for over a while. Anyway, I got the qualification I
But
need.
why though? Like, why do you feel that you were so? Is it that you were interested in a lot of things, or you were just driven, or it's just that you're a naturally hardworking person?
I think the answer to that is all three. I have to be honest with you because you cannot be shy of hard work. And I think for me, when I was younger, because obviously I was born in Nigeria, I came here when I was about 11, 12. My father instilled a discipline in us, in his children. Hard work and be motivated, you know.
Mm,
So, and then also I'd been to boarding school in Nigeria and all that, that. So you have this in you, and I don't know, maybe it's just because obviously a lot of people do this, go to. But I think the key thing is if you really want to see something and you have a vision for yourself, which I'm
mm,
sure each and every person does, you see yourself somewhere. And for me, I saw myself doing the things I really enjoy doing. And I saw myself in a place 20 years ago that I thank God I feel I'm getting closer to it now. But then I wasn't.
mm,
So
mm.
when you feel
So,
dissatisfied about where you are, but instead of sitting there complaining that, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that, oh this, oh that, oh, I wish, you think, well, what can I do? You have to find out information. And thank goodness now we have internet freely. You
mm,
find out information. How can I get to where I want to be?
mm,
you
mm,
know so
mm,
basically that was how I then qualified as a solicitor. Although I wanted to be bar, I thought, you know what, if God says, or if the situation is telling me, look, if I stayed saying I'm looking for a bar position, it will have lapsed. And I even have friends that their
mm,
training lapsed,
mm, mm,
so they have to go and start all over again, which a lot of them have said they can't be bothered to. And I just thank God that it worked out anyway for me. It was a longer journey, but it worked out. So the key thing is just holding on to your dreams, working towards it. And I just believe the universe comes together, for us if we are thinking in a certain way, we are motivated. And it also comes from your heart as well.
Yeah, I think there's the danger of looking at what's around you more than looking at where you want to go. So the danger of like, oh, I need to do this just so that I can pay bills instead of looking at where you are going. So the energy that you're using to look at this, trying to do something to pay bills, is more than the energy that you're using to look at where you see that, chasing after that vision that you have. So I think one needs to take your focus more off what's around you immediately and look more, focus. I think you would get more from having that long term vision than
Absolutely. I mean, you've sort of wrapped it all up, because to be quite honest with you, that was the motivating factor of, you know what, there were times that, believe me, money was very, very tight. But if you stopped to say you're looking at the money being tight, you know what I mean? You could end up focusing on, let me just sort out the immediate situation
mm,
right now. You know
mm,
what I mean? So what you're saying is absolutely true. So I'm not saying it was easy to walk through that journey at that time. It wasn't.
Yeah, because
But
it would affect your. I mean, I've seen people who say, you know, who are they have these big qualifications and masters and doctorates and whatever, but they, and no offense to anybody, but they say they get into a desperate situation where, like, I'm going to get security work, or I'm going to go and look for work in Tesco, kind of.
mm,
I'm going to find a work as a cleaner, that kind of thing, because of the pressures of the immediate situation. And I
mm,
guess that in a way has its place,
mm,
but
mm, mm,
then sometimes it actually takes you away from where you should really be going, you know.
I mean, the one thing I would say is I hear what you're saying, but you see, it's a matter of combining things.
Mm,
Having faith and praying, because there are sometimes with some situations you have to do sometimes do that. Like I was explaining to you, with my podiatry, I didn't give up my registration because
mm,
at one time I was thinking of giving it up, and I thought about it and I thought, you know what, fine, I know I wasn't enjoying this. That's why I started this other journey with the law. But now when I now had the kids, they were growing older. With the podiatry qualification, I could locum. When you locum, you can get X amount of money. There's always work in podiatry. It's like nursing. If you go to an agency, they will give you work. Even where I was working when I got my first job, they keep asking me to come back. I went back there about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, just briefly locuming. When I left the job, the one I told you I got, where the woman said, just come. I stayed there. I did what I had to do there. And again, you see, this journey we're talking about, it's not like I planned a lot of things. So the
mm,
job I told you where I got the job, I was so grateful and happy because it was a good job, paid really well.
mm,
Um, and even when I started there, the woman put me on the highest band. So it
mm,
was like, they were so desperate. And I said to them then that, look, if you want me to come, these are the terms, blah, blah, blah. And so I was quite comfortable financially when I started there. Now that's the danger, because that comfort kept me there for about, let me see, 8 years or so, I think, something like that. Because it was so comfortable, I didn't have to think about it. It was a good job. Every month on the 15th, I knew how much I would be getting paid. You know what I mean? So in a way,
so
I
it's
knew my
almost like the opposite of what I just said. It's
no, no,
almost
what is
is even that that place where it's cushy that now becomes a danger because you might be
absolutely.
comfortable,
I
you know.
was really comfortable there, and I thought, well, why would I want to move here? But you see, in my heart, I just knew I wanted to work for myself. And since my 20s, like I said to you, there was just this thing that was like, I like that freedom of being out
Um,
there, choosing what I want to do. So I think circumstances orchestrated themselves to my benefit without me realizing, because that lady I told you came, left eventually about 3 years after she took the job. Then
mm,
they had some interim managers. Then eventually they had another manager there that gave me a hard time, because then I had my third child. So by the time I had my third child, this manager is when this manager started in 2009.
mm,
Started in 2009-10 in that same place. So this man now was very difficult. I don't know what it was. It was just frustrating me in so many ways. And then I thought to myself, like, what can I do here? Like, I enjoyed the work, don't get me wrong,
mm,
but
mm,
there were so many things. Because sometimes, yes, I would get there a bit late. I had a baby,
mm,
third child, and the other managers were very flexible. In fact, I used to even do the timetable for them. So when I used to do it, I used to sort of do it to my own convenience, because I knew the days I wanted to be early, days I wanted to be late. I did give
mm,
them value for money, because at the end of the day, they will say to me, do this, do this, do that. Then I discount the time from home. So it was really comfy. But anyway, this manager, long and short of it, was determined. He didn't like me there, which was fair enough, because me, I spoke my mind. I did things the way we were meant to do things. But long and short of it, they then decided they were going to have some redundancies about 2014, I believe it was, yeah. And they were going to get rid of 2 people. I think we were a team of like 8 or 9. And it was around this time that I was so frustrated. I thought, what am I going to do here? So this was the time when I thought to myself, you know what, maybe I should even start my website and start doing something. And
Mm.
I've been asking one of my brothers for many years to help me with my website because I'm an IT illiterate. I mean, I have to confess, I'm slowly getting there, but terrible with IT. And one of this my brother, he traveled, he went away at one time, he traveled to Nigeria for a year to live, this, that, and the other. So one day, anyway, I got him, I cornered him, and I said, look, you better help me with this website. It has to be done. So this is how he even showed me. It was Google sites, right?
Mm.
He showed me, said, look, for me, this is it. Go Google sites. What do you want the picture to look like? What do you want this, that, and the other? And between me and him, within 3 hours, he set up the website. He showed me how to administer it. I didn't pay one penny. It was just a simple Google website. And then what I now did was I took that website and then in my break time, whenever I had my break at my job where things were getting a bit funny, I would go to the toilet, and this is really literally how it started. I will look up online, phone up different places where I could be doing my podiatry, where I
Mm.
could offer them services. I'll go to the toilet, I'll phone them, I'll say, oh, I'm calling from blah, 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 what I called my company. Do
Mm.
you have any need for our services? Believe me, nine out, or even let me say not nine, maybe 19 out of 20 times, we're not interested. We've got someone. Please just, don't call. It was really, really disheartening. Eventually, I got one
I
person.
think about that thing when people say they do that, and I'm like, oh wow, that is such that's hardcore. That's like
No, it
really
is true.
that's
That's what
hardcore.
I
You
did.
have to have a heart of like a heart of strong heart to do that. Call.
It wasn't easy at all.
Mm.
Believe me, it was during the toilet. Even there was one time one guy saw me upstairs because this. I think you've been to the way I used to work then. I don't know if you ever met me there in Ilford, somewhere in Ilford. It's just opposite Sainsbury's. I don't know if
Yeah,
we ever met. But
yeah. Mm.
so I used to go to the third floor where it was empty, and then there were toilets there. So one day I remember one of my colleagues said, "Fumi, what are you doing?" I said, "Nothing. I'm just having my break." But basically, I would go into the toilet, make phone calls, and this is how I got my first breakthrough. And I eventually, when the people told me to come, I thought it was a joke. I even thought it was that manager that was trying to get, rid of me, that was playing tricks on me. So when I now got the first, like contracting service, I now did this like during my own time, because at the time I was working, I think I was working 4 days a week then with these people. I managed to negotiate to take a day off. And that is basically how the business grew. So now when it was time for them to do their redundancies, everybody had to sell themselves basically, because they were all had to reapply for jobs and all that.
Mm. Oh wow.
So when it was now my turn, I dressed up well, I did everything. I came with my papers, and the manager said, okay, for me, so this is your opportunity. And I
Why
said to him,
why do you think you belong here, or why do you
I
think you feel?
exactly. And what I did was, because I dressed up all nicely, everything, prepared. And I said to him, I said, you know what, thank you very much for you people. You've given me a wonderful opportunity. I've worked here, I think, for about 9 years. I've really enjoyed it. I've grown. But I want to be one of the people that you let go of, because, this is, I feel I've done what I need to do here. So the man's
Mm.
mouth dropped and he was like, I said, don't you? I said, no.
You were coming to beg for your job.
Yes,
Oh
because I
wow.
dressed like I dressed really serious. I had some papers in my hand, but I wanted to surprise him, because I said to him, look, this will make your job easier. You only need to find one more person,
Mm.
because I just write me out of the equation. So he was really shocked, and I just thank God. That was what God said to me to do. And as a result of that, I got a little redundancy. It wasn't a huge amount, but I got something anyway. And I left there and I thank God. But it was the motivating factor of the way things were going. I knew this man didn't want me, and I think he wanted the opportunity to even say he's going to sack me or something. You know what I mean? So I just thank God that when I believe in prayer, right? And one thing I believe in is when things are going to come together for you, sometimes your solution might come as a problem.
Hmm.
Believe me now, it's been about, we're 2020 now, 6 years since I've left that place. Whenever I speak to my old colleagues, and I always say, if I ever meet that man, it was in fact a Nigerian man, because all the other bosses we had there were all good, very good to me. I will give him a gift, honestly, because he did me the best favor by pushing me out. But I didn't know that this was the time for me to have left there then. But basically he helped
That thing you
me.
just saw it as a problem.
I saw it as a problem, but when I look back
Wow.
now, I keep thanking God for him. that if not for him, I would probably still either be there or be somewhere else, you
Mm,
know.
mm,
So when I look at the journey, because there are a lot of risks involved, after I left in 2014, yes, I did get that contract and I got a few others, but things were not as well as I wanted it to be financially. But obviously, before I left and gave them that decision, I'd saved enough for me to say, you know what, even if I didn't work for a year, I know I'll be fine just living as I am. So at that time, I went again back to locum. I did some locuming work with my podiatry, with the people I was working with, and I was doing some law work because then I was just juggling what I could. I said to myself, you know what, on my own terms, I wanted to study law, do the law, and work as a lawyer. But when I saw the reality of life, I couldn't do that. Because if I did that and said I only want to do this, with the law, you don't know when you will get work. It is very,
mm.
haphazard. And I wasn't working for anybody, as in I didn't want to be employed, working for anyone. So it was a matter of, this is what lands in your hand, deal with it. If you have the skill, you have to make it work. And for me, it was a difficult thing because I wanted to have one hat on. I just wanted to be this.
It's very unusual, because of how you stayed focused on what you were doing. Um,
Mhm.
your camera is gonna let me tell your
Oh,
camera.
sorry. I think my
Yeah,
battery was really low. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, okay. So, but it's very unusual. I mean, you are very unusual in that way. I mean, what do you do? You're doing your podiatry and you're still practicing your law, but you are looking at it in a very pragmatic way, like, this is what I have, so I'm going to use what I have, because somebody
Mm.
else will say, well, which one is she doing that? Is he law? Is she a lawyer? Is she a doctor? But it's like, you just looked at it in a very pragmatic way, and it's almost like this is a means to an end. This is what I have. These are the tools I have in my hand. I'm going to use them to the fullest, and I think that's an amazing way of approaching things. Because sometimes we think, oh, should I really, am I not, does it not look as if I'm doing too many things? Does it not look as if I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm
A
doing?
jack of all trades. Yes.
That kind of.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Mm,
you're absolutely right on that because even with my colleagues, there was a time where I had to make some rules for myself because when I was doing my podiatry, some of my colleagues would say, for me, but I thought you said you're studying law. And what kind of, just like you said,
mm, mm,
and then there are times when, I then had to be really strict on myself. And it got to a stage where I made up my mind not to ever discuss my podiatry with my podiatry people, anything to do with law. So
mm,
basically, I kept them as two separate worlds. And with the law people, if they ask me, some people may ask, "Oh, what did you do before?" Because obviously, I came in as a mature student. I say, "Oh, I used to do this." So basically, I just had to keep them as two separate worlds, and I found that was the best way forward. You know what I mean?
that's interesting.
And that's what I did.
I'll
So
take that one and put it in my own pocket.
So I dealt with it because I felt, people get, like you said, some people will say, I thought you are doing this and I thought you are doing that. And then it brings an unusual conversation when if you are dealing with the podiatry, you think, you know what, let me just deal with your podiatry issue. That's what I'm here for, rather than, get into this.
Mm,
But the issue here is now, this, I mean, I'm hoping that, any person that is thinking of making this journey will see that it is possible because 6 years on from when I was working as an employee, getting paid as my wages at the 15th of the month, I had to get to a stage where I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'll be paying myself. How can I cope? Will it happen really? Is
mm,
this reality?
mm, mm,
And all I will say is you have to stay strong, be focused, and you also have to believe in yourself. You know what I mean? And that is it. Because now I'm grateful. I'm very grateful that I can, you know, do what it is I prayed. When I was in my 20s, I knew I wanted to do something where I had control of my time,
mm,
decided how my day will go, this, that, and the other. And I thank God I'm at that stage, where I can do such a thing. So, but the key thing is there's always also learning, because one thing I do a lot is I love to learn from others.
mm,
I love to learn from others. There's so many times, I will, read about other women, that are doing this, that, and the other. And I find it really, really encouraging, especially when we know many of us are mothers,
mm.
so you have to juggle that,
Yeah.
um, you know.
Yeah, because your children have actually gotten the best of you, you know. It's not like you've really been a mother. I mean, I've known you all these years. You've been a mother to your children. You've been there for them physically as well as
Mm,
every other way, you know.
mm,
And what you said something about I had a question for you, but I want you to talk more about prayer because you've mentioned it a couple of times. You know, pray. You know, your prayer life, or let me just say, where prayer comes into your whole journey of this being
mm.
self-employed, even your work journey. You know, your career and your career as well as being self-employed. How where does prayer come into it?
I think for me personally, prayer is very important. It is part of it. It is all of it is what I have to say, because we have to be so grateful, for so many things. Even with all these things we say we want to do this, that, and the other. You know, I believe in just I know what I want, and then I pray.
Mm,
If what I want happens, I'm very, very grateful. I'll do whatever it is I feel I can do. But one thing I know is when you do pray, if it's what is meant to also be, one way or the other, God will orchestrate things for you,
yeah.
for the person. That's what I believe. Because
Mm,
like I told you about the lady that I went for an interview and she just said, "Oh, you got the job." I was thinking, I thought it was a joke. You know, I was doing my podiatry work. I saw a magazine which led me to, into this
mm-hmm,
journey. No, it's
mm-hmm,
not as if I went to apply for a job I saw in LinkedIn or online or something. It was just a coincidence I picked up that magazine on that day. Like I told you, I like reading things, about other people.
mm, mm,
So, it's just a matter of, I believe when you pray, you have that faith. It can take a long time. Believe me, there are times even I wanted to give up myself. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's always been this, that, and the other. There are times where I felt, what, maybe this was not cut out for me. There are times I felt like that because, excuse me, the journey it was not so easy. There were times it was very, very hard, but you pray, so I won't say I never got to a point where sometimes I thought actually maybe am I doing the right thing? Am I? There are times where I doubt myself as well.
I think sometimes even the answer, to prayer is not always that things change, but I think sometimes the answer to prayer is that you just have the strength to keep going.
Mm,
Sometimes,
mm,
or the strength to not give up, or you were feeling like you were about to give up, and then after that you don't feel like giving up. You feel like you can keep going. And I think that alone is even an answer to
mm.
prayer. I think so. So I wanted to ask you, so tell us one or two things that may have surprised you or that were unexpected when you became self-employed, things that you didn't expect to see, both bad and good, I guess.
There are lots of pros and cons. Should we start with the cons actually? Um, yes, you have to wear so many hats. Sometimes when I come in, like others in the home will be getting on with things, relaxing, and they'll see me. I'm replying to emails, I'm on the phone, I'm ordering something, I'm checking this out. I have to check with the ICO office. Have I done this? There's a constant list I have. I don't have any staff. So my staff is my Google Calendar. So
Hmm.
there's always something to do. Um, Always something to keep on top of. So I find that there's an endless list. So one of my cons I found was I used to sometimes write these things on paper or something, and then it took me a while. I had to get used to having my Google Calendar app on my phone. So as soon as someone tells me something, I don't say I'm going to remember it. I just put it straight in the calendar, even the simplest thing.
Hmm.
So there are lots of things to do, which is one of the things I'll say. And then also you have to have that discipline sometimes when to say no to work.
Hmm.
So that is one
A
thing I
good
found
one.
a bit difficult, that I had to struggle with a bit, because sometimes you don't know when your next, with self-employment, you don't know if you're saying no, and then you don't know what's going to happen next week. You cannot plan financially. I'm happy with it though, don't get me wrong. But if you say to me, for me, how much is going to happen next month? What's your projection? I don't know. But all
Hmm.
I can tell you is for the last 6, 7 years, it's been fine. you
Hmm.
know. So, and I thank God that it's been fine, and I'm
So
good with it.
how do you know when to say, how do you know that, oh, this is a job I should say no to?
That is the thing. So it's something that you have to, have that judgment sometimes as to, well, what do you do? And then when you're self-employed, obviously everyone is different. I'm lucky that I have certain friends in the podiatry field that I'm still, in good close contact with, and we sometimes work in partnership. So sometimes if I say no to someone, I could pass it on to them. I say, look, are you interested in this, that, and the other? So I always say no, but pass it on to somebody else. And likewise, sometimes they will pass me things as well.
Mm, mm,
Um, but yes, and also sometimes when I used to work, there was a time I used to work Saturday and Sundays as well. You know, I'll say, okay, I'm going to see people on this day, see people on that day. But for the past, forgive me for saying, I mean, Corona has come and it is a terrible and awful thing. But as a result of this Corona, when we had the 3 months of shutdown,
mm.
since the age of, I think, 18, I've never had a long period like that in my life ever on a holiday. Not holiday, but not to slow down.
Mm, mm,
So that enforced slowdown was a real lifesaver because it made me pause. I think I was doing so much. You don't realize what you're doing.
yeah.
And it was the time I actually did need that pause. So I was so grateful when I got that. And after that period happened, between March and June, I then made up my mind that I'm absolutely not working weekends at all.
Mm,
So that was a principal policy I did because I saw the benefits of taking time out. It was involuntary, involuntary with what
mm,
happened, but
mm.
there's so much you can do with taking time out. So obviously one of the cons for me was always when people want something, an appointment or whatever, I'll try and fulfill it.
Wherever.
Always, yeah,
Mm,
always, but now I know to say no. Oh, look, sorry, or you have to wait a week or 2 weeks. In the past, I wouldn't want to say that because I think, oh, I don't want to lose this customer, I don't want to
yeah,
lose this
yeah,
client,
yeah.
you know. But now I'm happy to think, you know what, if I lose them, something else will come in, or if they want me or they value my services, they will wait,
Okay.
you know.
Mm, mm,
So that's one of the cons. The pros, I'll say, outweigh them because with the pros, you have all the flexibility. You can, you can, how can I put it? You can remodel yourself, you can plan, you can work with other people. It all depends on what you want to do. With this internet we have, I mean, believe me, one of the prayers I say is for Google. Yeah, I thank God for Google because there's so much there, that they've put in the hands of the average person.
yeah,
The
yeah.
average person, if you have a good website, you can compete with a big multi-billion company
That's
on
good.
the computer. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
Mm,
technology has been really good, and that's one of the pros, I'll say. And also the fact that you know you can do a lot more. You're not capped as to what you want to do. So, like I said, with myself now, my
mm,
own plan is to slow down a bit, which is what I'm doing difficultly and consciously, trying not to overdo things like I was, and I'm benefiting from that. So my own motto at the moment is less is more. Before my motto was more is more, but for now, less is more. And I'm trying to sort of, because I think with self-employment, when you get to a stage where hopefully you feel comfortable, maybe with your planning and whatever financial arrangements you've done, you don't feel, you don't feel like you too anxious to be saying yes to your clients, is all I would say. You know what I mean?
mm, mm,
Mm,
mm, mm. So wait, what I'm getting from that is that in the beginning, you might need to like pull out all the stops and do all the hard work, and sometimes say no, say yes to the, to work that you rather not.
the answer is always yes at the
Yeah, the
beginning.
answer is always yes at the beginning, but that at a point you have,
Mm,
as you are beginning to structure yourself and
mm, mm.
business, because at the end of the day, it's about freedom, which you sought,
Absolutely.
and about lifestyle. So
Mm,
at some point you have to yeah, yeah, you have
mm,
to structure things to suit you more than having to put yourself bend over backwards and all that.
mm.
Mm. Okay. So family, tell me about family. Oh, I think that would be the last.
Okay. Family, what I can say is like I said, I have three children. First two, they're quite close in age. They're adults now. They're, over, you know, over 18, both of them. Um, I had energy when they were younger, but I didn't have
Mm,
the time too as much time to give them as I do with the last one I have now. You know.
mm, mm,
So I think the key thing though was, even with all the running around I did then, I always made sure that, we had time together. I used to they still remember the bedtime stories. Even if I came back from work late, I would spend time with them before they go to bed,
mm,
do
mm,
things with them that they still remember, which I thank God for,
mm,
but there wasn't much money then. But now with the other one, there's a bit more financially to buy
mm,
her things, because even the older ones complain, oh, we never had this, she has all these devices, she has this and that and the other, you know um but because obviously of the work, it's like a balance. You have to kind of continuously balance thing, and then if you have a spouse.
I think it's nice you've set a very good example for them, and then they get to see you, and then they also get to see your husband who works full time, so they get to see.
Mm,
It's almost like they get to see everything, they get to see different options, and know that they have
mm,
choices in life, and that they can make their own way. I think that's really, really helpful.
mm.
Mm,
So I think it just helps with balancing the family situation. It
mm,
does help.
mm,
It does help.
mm.
Mm.
Okay, so I didn't need to ask you how did COVID, because that would have been one of the questions
Mm.
I would have asked you. How did the lockdown affect you?
It's affected in so many ways, but I think I like to be very optimistic. So there were some negative points. Obviously, lack of work for 3 months was not good financially,
Mm,
but you have to pick out what is good. You know what I mean?
mm,
Well-being, mentally, and all that. It's been more positive, because it sort of gave me time to reflect on so many things. So I'm very grateful for that. And also, I think when with something like COVID, it makes us realize how, yes, we do want to do all these things and work for ourselves and all that, but the bottom line is, when you have life, that's the most important thing. And be grateful, for that simple, basic, you know,
that you're
basic
alive.
opportunity, that we are alive, we're healthy. That is plenty.
Mm, mm,
So that is one thing I'll say I take away from all this thing that is going on.
oh, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for having me as well. I really
Yeah,
appreciate being part
yeah.
of your journey, and hope this will be of use to
Yes, it has.
other
It's
people.
really helped me personally, and I hope it will help others as well. Just hearing the stories, some of the things, at least some people will say when they listen to your story, they'll be like, okay, so I'm on the right track, okay, so oh, I'm not doing too badly, that I mean, and that is really worth it, just hearing your story, somebody will be encouraged to keep going, you know.
And I think the key thing also is they should be patient. That's all I would say. Because when we
Mm,
are younger, I wasn't very patient. But
mm,
they need a bit of patience, to allow this thing to happen, and it will
yeah.
happen. It
Yeah,
will happen for them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you
So
so much, and I look
nice.
forward to hearing the other ladies' stories as well. Thank
Okay,
you so much. Okay, then. Take care.